This is Chris Isham. I'm the Washington Bureau Chief for CBS News, and welcome to Flashpoints. I'm here, as always, with Juan Zarate, our national security analyst. Juan, let's talk a little bit about the crisis in the Gulf, where more than a third of the world's oil passes through the Straits of Hormuz. On Tuesday, the Islamic Republic of Iran intercepted a container ship called the Maersk Tigris. It's a Marshall Islands flagged vessel carrying containers. They intercepted the boat and diverted it into Iranian waters, where they're still holding the ship as well as 30-odd crew members. The United States has sent a destroyer into the Gulf in monitoring this very closely. What do you think is going on?
Well, overall, what you have is the tensions in the region spilling into the maritime domain. And of course, you had in recent days the concern over Iranian shipping lines going to refuel, replenish the Houthi rebels in Yemen, the deployment of U.S. naval forces to intercept those. And so the tension in the region that's playing out on the ground in Yemen and the airstrikes that are being led by the Saudis is playing out a bit in the maritime domain. In particular, in this instance, I think the grave concern initially was that the Iranians were lashing out, and what they were trying to do was to impact commercial shipping and U.S. interests. What this is turning into, it looks like the Iranians and perhaps even the U.S. trying to sort of deflate this a bit, to say, look, this is really a commercial dispute with the Maersk line and this particular crew and these set of assets.
So there'd been a dispute, I believe, between the Islamic Republic and this line.
And the shipping line, right. And so the Iranians are claiming that this is really a matter of a commercial dispute, claiming there's an Iranian court order with respect to the seizure of some of these containers. And so in a sense, that's helpful because it deflates this from this grand sort of geopolitical crisis and makes it much more of a manageable dispute, if in fact that's true. But it is a reflection of the fact that tensions running very high, and that these tensions don't really have borders. These are conflicts that are happening on the ground, they're happening in the shipping lanes, and there are places and points of vulnerability that could and can serve as flashpoints for conflict. And so you could imagine this spiraling out of control with the Iranian Navy intervening and the U.S. Navy having to respond and suddenly having conflict escalate. And that's really, I think, the danger that the U.S. Navy and U.S. military officials worry about. They don't want unintended consequences and conflict created out of confusion or crisis inadvertently.
Well, we've also seen in the past where an incident which has started as one thing has turned into another. I mean, right. The takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran is one example of that.
That's exactly right. And I think what U.S. officials have done as a matter of doctrine militarily is to try to de-escalate potential conflict and to make sure that there's lines of communication. So there's no question in my mind that there are lines of communication now open between the U.S. and the Iranians, not to mention the Danish and others that have an interest in the shipping line. You don't want miscommunication here, especially as tensions are running high.
And ultimately, I assume it's in Iran's interest to keep those straits open. They don't want to see the straits jeopardized because they have their own commercial interests, correct?
Right. I think they certainly want the lanes open, but they also want the world to know that they can impact the lanes, and that this is a point of leverage and vulnerability that Iran can use to its advantage. And that's why they've run war games. That's why they destroyed a replica of a U.S. ship just the other day in some of these naval exercises. So they want to send clear messages that they can control the straits if they have to and want to. But you're right, in a steady state environment, they don't want to be closing down the shipping lanes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Juan, and we'll see you next time on Flashpoints.